Welcome to I Just Don't Know, a podcast where we learn something new, challenge opinions, and hope to make the misinformed informed. I can openly say I've spoken when I did not need to, been unnecessarily controversial, and shared my misinformed opinion, thinking it was not. In this podcast, I'll try to right some wrongs and take on a new topic each episode that I think I knew, but in fact, I just don't know. This episode is all about the beginning of something, that fuzzy feeling when you were younger. It's getting cold, but the idea of getting everything you want is just on the horizon. Everything starts to change outside. People start doing strange traditions. I'm of course talking about the signs of Christmas. So I wanted to do this podcast episode because we're in that sort of phase at the moment. I love Christmas in London in particular. And all the signs of Christmas are out, all on display this year. And it's so good to see it in person, everyone out and about trying to really enjoy the build up to Christmas. It is a bit early days still. I'm recording this in November. But I wanted to look into more detail about some of the things I really enjoy about Christmas, but maybe some of the assumptions I made about the origins of the Christmas spirit and that build up to sort of December and Christmas Day itself. And where does that actually come from? Because I'm going to start early on here with an assumption that is it all based on religion and the basis of that, or a lot of it is based on religion, or is a lot of it based on the influences of the sort of American consumerism drives and marketing drives of the 50s and 60s. So there's some of the assumptions there I'm going to look at trying to disprove. But also I just wanted to enjoy the sharing of these different signs. And so you might have some signs that are unique to you and traditions that you normally do in the build up to Christmas. I certainly have a few that might be unique and other people don't do. And some are very common and people really enjoy and do it. And we all do it together, and that's what I really like about, especially here in the UK, we have those traditions, and I definitely think they do it in Europe as well. So some of the things I really enjoy are that sort of idea of all the different sort of the tastes and smells of Christmas that come in. And more recently, I've had my first mince pie yesterday, and you have the smell of mulled wine, gingerbread latte as you get a bit older. But when I was younger, you would have that little bit more sort of chocolate. Someone would bring in a box of Quality Street, or someone would have sort of some chocolate cake or chocolate brownies they would make for into school, because it's sort of that build up to Christmas or leftovers from what they did at the weekend. But the biggest one is having chocolate in the morning. So I know some people have this in around sort of on Christmas Day, they definitely have chocolate in the morning. But it's all about advent calendars. And one of the biggest signs of Christmas is advent calendars everywhere, all over the shops in November, as early as almost October, straight after Halloween. But I really enjoy the different sort of advent calendars you can get. And I remember not religiously, but traditionally, my family, me and my brothers would always open our calendars and you would make sure we read the joke or comment that's inside it. But when I was thinking back when I was really young, I didn't have calendars necessarily with chocolate in, like that I will cover in a bit, but I had calendars that were actually religious and sort of pictures in. And that got me thinking about, when did it change? Why do we obsess with these Cadbury chocolate sort of advent calendars, and also these ones that you can get now with like beer in and big sort of expensive ones. I saw one on Etsy it was like a wooden sort of carved one with different things inside that was, I think it was about sort of £160 for an advent calendar. Absolutely bizarre. But it was the chocolate in the advent calendars that I think everyone is so used to. And I don't even think it's that good a chocolate if you do get some of the cheaper ones. But it's that feeling. It's all about having that little cheeky bit of chocolate. Unless everyone here has Cocoa Pops for breakfast, and cereal is a different topic I want to cover in terms of one of these bizarre I Just Don't Know podcasts. But I was looking into advent calendars a bit more, and obviously the definition of advent, hopefully most people know, is actually just it means coming in Latin, and it's sort of originates back to the 19th century. And originally Advent was set up for those who were going to convert to Christianity in the build-up to the celebration of the birth of Christ. And so that was where Advent originally sort of started from. But it was actually a German called Gerhard Long who supposedly printed the first Advent calendar in the early 1900s. And he set up a business, but unfortunately with World War II and World War One hitting, there was a massive global shortage of cardboard. So as a result, he had to close down. And also it was illegal in Germany to print a picture that did not sort of support the Nazi regime. So, and they actually created, which is something I learned, a Nazi version that had different sort of symbols of Nazism for people to open for an advent calendar. So that was very interesting discovery. That's quite a build up to Christmas. But I think the true sort of maybe the person that really made it big, the advent calendar, I was reading about, and really interestingly, this is where it all bases. And I love these sort of origin stories of post-war, where someone just did something that they enjoy, and now it is in all of our lives in the UK and Europe. Maybe not the US, but definitely in the UK and Europe. So the guy's Richard Selmer, based in Stuttgart in Germany, and he produced The Little Lone, and it's based on like a snowy German village, and it's like a picture, and you can open these sort of boxes or windows revealing more of the picture itself. And it's like a little story, and each day as you build up towards Christmas, the revealing of these pictures, it might be a door opening or a window opening within the picture, revealing something about the story. Maybe a sort of a watcher in the night, or a guy sort of leaning out the window shouting or looking for something. And it's like a really nice sort of sweet setup. So I thought, okay, that sort of reminds me of what I had when I was younger, when we had the sort of slightly religious ones. And but then what was great to see is that Richard Selmer still goes, and you can still buy a Selmer advent calendar from the website, and it's amazing. And they do over 140 different product types, and I looked, and it's only about just under €5 for it. Unfortunately, they only deliver to Germany and I think Europe, but definitely I think they only deliver to Germany, which is a shame. So if you ever make it to Germany, you won't manage to pick up a Selmer advent calendar, well, that's one of the originals. And they're very nice, and it's made me think, okay, maybe I should do that rather than getting sort of a traditional chocolate one, because I just love advent calendars, and that's why I've sort of gone off on this tangent about advent calendars as one of the biggest signs of Christmas, because I really do enjoy that sort of daily reminder that a time of rest and joyfulness with your family and friends is coming. It's on the horizon in the depths of this winter and dark evenings and sort of blistering cold and snow and things like that. It's coming. It's on the horizon, where you can really just rest and eat all the food. So then I wanted to sort of explore my assumptions that where did the chocolate advent calendars come from? And I thought and I assumed that they came from America, and it was just a consumerism, good marketing from some sort of firm that was trying to sell more the idea of an advent calendar. And I think I read that Selmer's German calendars were distributed to the US when cardboard became more readily available in the 1950s. So I figured, the US just sort of copied the idea, and then they just put chocolate in, and it made it more appealing to sort of kids and families. And as chocolate became more widely available to the world after the war, then it just was mass produced, and that's where it started. But actually, in fact, it was in sort of 1971, Cadbury's in the UK first created a chocolate calendar, but then they stopped. They didn't do it for very long. It was a one-off.
So that was based in the UK, but Selma supposedly did it in 1958, so in the late 50s. But he didn't really do it again. And then it wasn't until sort of the 80s that they actually started doing chocolate calendars. And going back to Cadbury's, who sort of working simultaneously here over in the UK, or here in the UK, they started doing more chocolate calendars in the 70s again, from 72 to 86. But then again, they stopped. So clearly it was either too expensive or we didn't really like the idea. I think I read that it was more sort of people were preferred the sort of religious, more traditional calendars, like the ones that I had sort of in the 90s, where you would sort of open those pictures and it might be a sort of a different scene of the birth of Christ, or it could be one of these little German sort of picturesque snowy villages that so everyone was sort of sticking to that, but because the parents, the generation of the 60s, who throughout the 70s and 80s, or the people who were born in the 50s, were more sticking to those traditions. But then from about 1993 onwards, that was when the chocolate calendars really kicked off, and Selma in Germany and Cadbury's in the UK really started selling calendars on a mass scale. And now you can get all sorts of chocolate calendars. I was in Hamleys in near Piccadilly Circus recently, and there was this massive Lego version one, and another Peppa Pig one, and there's Thornton ones, chocolate Thorntons. That's nice, and Hotel Chocolat ones for £30, and all these different advent calendars ideas. And I know someone who had little gifts per day, which I actually quite liked. I think I've gone for a sort of traditional one, I think Galaxy or something like that. Chocolate Galaxy. I'm looking forward to starting that. But actually, well, I did at work actually a couple of years back. I think I was inspired by something I saw. These sort of drinks advent calendars where you create like tubes and you can stick sort of a drink can in it, or a little bottle of champagne or prosecco. I think I handmade one out of sort of packaging tubing for like maps, cut them into pieces, covered it in green paper, stacked it like a Christmas tree, 24 tubes, happy days, but sort of covers on each one with a number, and there you have it, an advent calendar that my team opened each day and took turns, and I put a little joke in there, everyone to say, and I think it lasted 3 years. 3 years is, can't believe it. And I think this year it was thrown away as we moved out of the old office, and I wasn't able to retrieve it as we've come back to the office. So it had a good innings. It did really well, but it's definitely is my obsession with advent calendars. I just love that build up, and I still remember, it's crazy, I still remember talking in my lower school. I must have only been about 6 or 7 people talking about advent calendars, but because I went to a sort of a Catholic lower school, so up to the age of I think 9 or 8, from the age of 6 to 8, 6 to 9, I think. They were really emphasizing the religious side of things, of the build up to Christmas. So maybe that pushed me towards loving the sort of the more secular side of Christmas. And I read an article recently about what were the 9 signs of Christmas, and it did make me laugh a little bit because it missed out some of the big ones. But it did it sort of disprove some of my assumptions that everyone is like me when it comes to Christmas. And I think it's really easy to assume that some people will enjoy things just as much as you do, or everyone should like Christmas, or it's either polarized and you either love Christmas or you hate Christmas. Although I don't know many people that do hate Christmas. But it's interesting that everyone enjoys it in different ways in terms of the build-up to Christmas. Christmas itself is a whole nother thing. But the 9 signs of Christmas were, the first off, were the Christmas lights. And I get that. Christmas lights everywhere. I think everyone gets that, and that's one of the first thing everyone thinks of. But not everyone goes to the Christmas light turn-on show. I know I've went to that a few times back home in Bedford, and I didn't. Friends of mine went to the one in London, which must have been quite exciting. And I know they get sort of random celebrities back in the day to turn them on in different cities. And it's a sort of a sign of prestige for the local hero or the local legends in there, or if not, if it's a big one, some sort of big TV celebrity star. So the Christmas lights is a big one, but I don't think everyone enjoys them the same amount. and they're not always to the best quality. I think the ones in London and Oxford Street are very impressive due to the scale of them. But I think actually in some of the smaller cities in the UK, I think they're sort of actually better sometimes, because they've got more control, less area to cover, and therefore can put more time and thought into it. And I think it's one of the best things all these sort of these councils and government officials and local authorities do, because they have to take the brunt of it and organisation of it. And I'm sure someone has to do that job each year, and I'm sure they don't use the same lights as people sometimes do in their own home, sort of repetitive use, and maybe they do with some of the big pieces, but I know I love that people are putting them up, and I think this week or this weekend will be a big weekend for lots of places for turning their street sort of town centre high street lights on, so very exciting. The number 2 on the signs was mince pies in the shop everywhere, and I think that's definitely the case. I bought a set of mince pies today, Sainsbury's Finest, and yesterday we got some mini Tesco Finest ones. We do a mince pie competition a few years back at work, and where they sort of assess the different mince pies from all the different shops nearby, Sainsbury's, Tesco's, M&S, some of these sort of little market shows, and they did a scoring system, and I think M&S actually won, even up against some of the more expensive bespoke market spots. So very interesting there. My mum makes little mince pies, homemade ones, like small mini ones, just perfect with a cup of tea, probably only about 80 to 90 calories, whereas the ones in the shops are pushing on 230, 250 calories. So that's a proper pudding, that almost at least half a pudding. So you don't, that's quite, so a little mini mince pie is my favourite. But the sheer number of them, and they sell them for £1, like they must make so many, and I'd love to hear from someone who has to work in a factory or somewhere where they actually put these all together, and they must start in November, like buying all the stock and making the mincemeat and putting it together. There is just so many out there, and for a decent price. Number 3 was the ice cold weather. So this is a sort of a debatable one. I wouldn't necessarily say cold weather with Christmas, but I think a bit of snow. People always definitely associate snow with Christmas. An interesting one. I don't really know why that is. Maybe it is the time of year. We don't really get snow that often, but again, I assume that some places will get snow very early, October, so they surely don't associate snow with Christmas. So a subjective one there. Number 4 is that shops play Christmas music very early on, like the beginning of November, as soon as Halloween's done. But I actually disagree with that, because I've been in a number of shops recently and they're still not playing them. And these are like generic sort of supermarkets and clothes shops. They're not playing them yet. So maybe they've held back this year because of the criticism, or the employees will just can't stand things. So very interesting there. The next one was a bit negative, actually. I didn't really like this one, but it's sort of true. I think it's more of a sign of autumn. But number 5 was everyone gets a cold. Everyone gets sick. I think that's not necessarily generally the case. I think maybe in December people get sick because they're going out every nights and going to the markets and having socials and social events and things like that. So I can appreciate that's why people perhaps get sick, but an interesting one. Number 6 was ice rinks. So ice rinks everywhere popping up. I know the one near the Natural History Museum in London, it's their last year this year. So it's a bit of a sort of momentous occasion. And if you have never been, definitely go. I'm definitely going to try and go, because they're building some sort of garden there or natural environment there that they will not be able to interrupt or disrupt going forward. So in line with sort of climate change and things like that, and trying to improve the environment over there, it makes sense. And I've heard the ice rink there is okay. It's a bit small and sort of grooved, and it's not the smoothest of ice rinks, but obviously with the view, it's pretty impressive. So I get that, but no, definitely go. I think the one I really want to go to again is the ice rink in Soho, Somerset House in near the river. Skate, I think it's called. Big sort of letters of skate and a huge Christmas tree, sort of pink lighting. Somerset House is truly wonderful place. I really love it. Lots of good memories and interesting memories there. Definitely recommend. In terms of other ice rinks, I know there's definitely ones in a little one in Nottingham that has a great market there, as well as Birmingham. So ice rinks, so yeah, I agree with that. Number 7 is the Coca-Cola advert. I would say that is a sign, but I think the John Lewis advert is more of a sign. So and I made the assumption that the John Lewis advert is generally the sign. I actually was talking to someone and they always are interested about the Aldi advert. And the Aldi advert, I would say, you could say, and I would agree, it has the best advert this year. So I don't know what you think, but I think the Aldi absolutely smashed it with their sort of like carrot Scrooge story, taking a little joke about not Colin the Caterpillar, the one they've created. Forgot about it now. But their adverts, yeah, it's really good. A lot better than John Lewis. But John Lewis back in the day, especially the Penguin one, I think, absolutely crushed it in terms of getting people in the mood and emotional and happy about sort of thinking about Christmas in an emotional way early on and getting people going. But no, John Lewis is obviously having a bit of a hard time, so they probably were limited on what they could do. They're trying to be up to date with things, but it's a department store because there's only so much you can do. And then number 8 was actually, speaking of department stores, is actually looking at the department store windows and seeing how all the displays have become Christmassy. And this is something I did last night, actually. We went to different areas of Oxford Street and Regent Street, and there are some really sort of really nice, impressive displays in these huge windows that normally you'd sort of walk past naturally, but with the big displays of the presents and the lights, and they must cost thousands to put together, but they do attract you, and they really are. Window shopping in that sense is making it does make the atmosphere, and I think it's quite unique to London, less so perhaps in other cities, maybe in some of the shopping centres around the UK, but I think window shopping is, with the sort of creating that Christmas feeling, definitely a thing. But I would be intrigued to see what it's like in like Germany and those sort of supermarkets. I think it's very similar in Europe. It's reminding me and making me think of the window shopping in Japan, where they have lots of resin based food. So all the meals that you can buy, they make it look perfect, and then they pour resin on it or something like into that sort of process, and then it stays in place, and then they put it sort of at an angle so it's looking at you, and you can see every single dish that restaurant serves covered in resin, sort of that plastically look almost like the food or the fake food you get with sort of a kid's kitchen set. But it doesn't really do it for me, but that's how they present their windows, and I find it's really interesting to see the different dishes, but plastic food doesn't look that appetizing sometimes. But you do get used to it. But no, that sort of department store windows point did get me thinking about that. And then the last one, probably one of my favourites, and I think growing on everyone, is the German markets. And this sort of goes right around back to Mr. Richard Selmer over in Stuttgart back in the 40s and 50s, creating that advent calendar out of a bit of cardboard and drawing those amazing little scenes of beautiful sort of snowy German towns and mountainous villages. The Germans have absolutely smashed it with creating that Christmas feeling, and German markets with the bratwurst and the currywurst and the churros, which I don't think is German, but that's the Spanish jumping in there. Pancakes or little sort of waffles or something like that, or the chocolate fountains. I think it's definitely a bit of a mishmash of different influences, food influences, things that people enjoy. I think there's definitely other things that are going to come in the future. I think churros are naturally popular with people, but I don't think they're sort of German market based. When I was in Berlin, there was a lot of sort of chocolatey nuts from memory that were sort of well priced, and they were really nice. You get sort of loads of bags for them, and everyone was selling those. I definitely want to go to a proper German market in sort of not necessarily just Berlin, but like sort of, as I said, Stuttgart and Frankfurt, Munich, and really get that feeling, because the UK ones are amazing. I think Birmingham is actually really good. Nottingham's great. Liverpool, I think, has a really good one. But London, they've got a bunch in London: Covent Garden, Trafalgar Square, Leicester Square. They're okay. They're decent. But I actually think that all the little trinkets they sell, looking at them, sometimes you just go, well, they've just bought them from a wholesaler here. The person selling them is just a reseller, effectively. You want to go to a German market where that person there actually sells that stuff. And I don't think that happens as often now, because I think it's a bit of a money-making scheme, which I can't fault them. That's what they're doing. They've decided to work for 6 weeks in a store, stand in the cold. They've bought a whole load of this stock. They've said to the organisers, well, this is our plot. How much does it cost? We'll pay it off with what we sell. The rest will keep us profit, and we'll offset the rest of the cost for the stock, and we'll sell the stock on next year or something like that. So I can't blame them. They're trying to make some money, but I really want to go to a market where they are, the person who is there actually sells them. But I don't think that is actually much of a thing with the German market, because it's that pull. Everyone wants to go to that German market feel, and I think the ultimate one there is Winter Wonderland, and I hope everyone here gets to go to Winter Wonderland. I'm very happy that I'm going sort of the week before Christmas. Very excited for that. It's going to be excellent. I'm going to enjoy the market, but also enjoy the beer hall, because you can't go wrong with the beer hall as well, and that's a whole other thing. Is a beer hall a sign of Christmas? Well, not really, because of Oktoberfest, but I think it's not too far off the signs of Christmas in London anyway. Going to a sort of German beer hall, enjoying a Stein. But overall, my assumptions of everything is about religion, well, I don't think that's not the case anymore. I think it's a bit of a mishmash of German influences and UK influences and food influences that we enjoy, but also just the love of the sharing of what each person enjoys. My assumption that we are heavily influenced by the US and what they do, I think, is not actually that true. And maybe in sort of some of the films, definitely. But I think that's really the sort of week or so before Christmas. But the signs of Christmas in those sort of late November period, early December. The biggest one I love, obviously, the advent calendars. Christmas lights are great. The adverts, fantastic. The weather, the music, the shopping. But overall, it's thoroughly enjoyable. Hope you enjoyed this slightly different podcast. I have. It's as you can hear, I love Christmas. Please do continue to listen to my podcast. I've learned a little bit about Christmas in this one, and I've perhaps corrected some of my assumptions of how we're influenced in the build up to Christmas. And I hope you've learned something too. So thanks so much, and bye everybody.